Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to today's reading from Krsna Book. We are reading the chapter Delivering the Wives of the Brahmanas. And we were reading how the Brahmanas, who were so much engrossed in the yagyas and everything else going on at that time, and they didn't pay much attention to anything else around, and how the boys who were with Krishna and Balram, when they got hungry, they wanted to ask for some food because Krishna and Balram sent them, but they didn't oblige to any of their pleas, and we will continue from there on. When the boys saw the Brahmanas would not reply to them even with a simple yes or no, they became very much disappointed. They then returned to Lord Krishna and Balram and explained everything that had happened. After hearing their statements, the Supreme Personality of Godhead smiled. He told them that they should not be so worried about being refused by the Brahmanas, because that is the way of begging. He convinced them that one who is engaged in collecting or begging should not think that he will be successful everywhere. He may be successful in some places and unsuccessful at others. So that should not be cause for disappointment. Lord Krishna then asked all the boys to go again, but this time to the wives of those Brahmanas engaged in sacrifices. He also informed them that these wives were great devotees. They are always absorbed in thinking of us. Go there and ask for some food in my name and in the name of Balaram. I'm sure that they will deliver you as much food as you desire. Carrying out Krishna's orders, the boys immediately went to the wives of Brahmanas. They found the wives sitting inside the house. They were very beautifully decorated with ornaments. After offering them their respectful obeisances, the boys said, "Dear mothers, please accept our humble obeisances and hear our statement. May we inform you that Lord Krishna and Balram are nearby. They have come here with the cows, and you may know also that we have come here under their instructions. All of us are very hungry, therefore we have come to you for some food. Please give us something to eat for Krishna, Balaram and ourselves." Immediately upon hearing this, the wives of the Brahmanas became anxious for Krishna and Balram. These reactions were spontaneous. They did not have to be convinced of the importance of Krishna and Balram immediately upon hearing their names. They became very eager to see them. Being advanced by thinking of Krishna constantly, they were performing the greatest form of mystic meditation. All the wives then became very busily engaged in filling up different pots with nice food. Due to the performance of the sacrifice, the various foods were all very palatable. After collecting a feast, they prepared to go to Krishna, their most beloved object, exactly in the way rivers flow to the sea. For a long time, the wives had been eager to see Krishna. However, when they were preparing to leave home to go see him, their husbands, fathers, sons and relatives asked them not to go. With the wives, they did not comply. When a devotee is called by the attraction of Krishna, he does not care for the bodily ties. The women entered the forest of Vrindavan on the bank of Yamuna, which was verdant with vegetation and newly grown vines and flowers. Within that forest, they saw Krishna and Balram engaged in tending the cows along with their very affectionate boyfriends. The Brahmanas' wives saw Krishna with a blackish complexion, wearing a garment that glittered like gold. He wore a nice garland of forest flowers and a peacock feather on his head. He was also painted with the minerals found in Vrindavan, and he looked exactly like a dancing actor on a theatrical stage. They saw him resting one hand on the shoulder of his friend, and on his other hand, he was holding a lotus flower. His ears were decorated with lilies. He wore marks of tilak, and he was smilingly charming. With their eyes, the wives of the Brahmanas saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, of whom they had heard so much, who was so dear to them and in whom their minds were always absorbed. Now they saw him eye to eye and face to face, and Krishna entered within their hearts through their eyes. Within themselves they began to embrace Krishna to their heart's content, and the distress of separation was mitigated immediately. They were just like great sages who, by the advancement of knowledge, merge into the existence of the Supreme. As the Super Soul living in everyone's heart, Lord Krishna could understand their minds. They had come to him despite all the protests of their relatives, fathers, husbands, brothers, and despite all the duties of the household affairs. They came just to see him, who was their life and soul. They were exactly following Krishna's instruction in the Bhagavad Gita. One should surrender to him, giving up all varieties of occupational and religious duties. He therefore began to speak to them, smiling very magnificently. It should be noted in this connection that when Krishna entered into the wives' hearts and when they embraced him and felt the transcendental bliss being merged with him, the Supreme Lord Krishna did not lose his identity, nor did the individual wives lose theirs. The individuality of both the Lord and the wives remained, yet they felt oneness in existence. When a lover submits to his lover without any pinch of personal consideration, that is called oneness. Lord Chaitanya has taught us this feeling of oneness in his Shikshashtaka, the 8 teachings which Lord Chaitanya left. Krishna may act freely doing whatever he likes, but the devotee should always be in oneness or in agreement with his desires. That oneness was exhibited by the wives of Brahmanas in their love for Krishna. Krishna welcomed them with the following words: "My dear wives of Brahmanas, you are very fortunate and are welcome here. Please let me know what can I do for you. Your coming here to see me, neglecting all the restrictions and hindrances of relatives, fathers, brothers, husbands, is completely befitting. One who does this actually knows his self-interest, because rendering transcendental loving service unto me without motive or restriction is actually auspicious for the living entities." Lord Krishna here confirms that the conditioned soul can reach the highest perfectional stage by surrendering to him. One must give up all other responsibilities. This complete surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the most auspicious path for the conditional soul, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the supreme objective of love. Everyone is loving his self according to the advancement of his knowledge. Ultimately, when a person comes to understand that his self is the spirit soul and that the spirit soul is nothing but a part and parcel of Supreme Lord, he recognizes the Supreme Lord as the ultimate goal of love and then surrenders unto him. This surrender is considered auspicious for the conditioned soul. Our life, property, home, wife, children, or husband, house, country, society, and all paraphernalia which are very dear to us are expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the central object of love because he gives us all bliss, expanding himself in so many ways according to our different situations, namely bodily, mental, or spiritual. My dear wives of the Brahmanas, Krishna said, you can now return to your home, engage yourselves in sacrificial activities and in the service of your husbands and household affairs, so that your husbands will be pleased with you and the sacrifice which they have begun will be properly executed. After all, your husbands are householders, and without your help, how can they execute their prescribed duties? The wives of the Brahmanas replied, Dear Lord, this sort of instruction does not befit you. Your eternal promise is that you will always protect your devotees, and now you must fulfill this promise. Anyone who comes and surrenders unto you never goes back to the conditioned life of material existence. We expect that you will now fulfill your promise. We have surrendered unto your lotus feet, which are covered by the tulasi leaves, so we have no desire to give up the shelter of your lotus feet and return to the company of our so-called relatives, friends, and society. And what shall we do if we return home? Our husbands, brothers, wives, sons, mothers, and friends will no longer accept us at home. because we have already left them all. Therefore, we have no shelter to return to. Please, therefore, do not ask us to return home, but arrange for our stay under your lotus feet so that we can eternally live under your protection." The Supreme Personality of Godhead replied, "My dear wives of the Brahmanas, rest assured that your husbands will not neglect you on your return, nor will your brothers, sons, or fathers refuse to accept you, because you are my pure devotees. Not only your relatives, but also people in general, as well as the demigods, will be satisfied with you. Krishna is situated as a super soul in everyone's heart, so if someone becomes a pure devotee of Krishna, he immediately becomes pleasing to everyone. The pure devotee of the Lord is never inimical to anyone, nor can any sane person be an enemy of a pure devotee. Transcendental love for me does not depend upon bodily connection." Krishna said further, "But anyone whose mind is always absorbed in me will surely very soon come to me for my eternal association." After being instructed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all the wives returned home to their respective husbands. Pleased to see their wives back, the Brahmanas sat together with them and executed the performances of sacrifices as enjoined in the Shastras. According to Vedic principles, religious rituals must be executed by the husband and wife together. When the Brahmanas' wives returned, the sacrifice was duly and nicely executed. One of the Brahmana's wife, however, who had been forcibly checked from going to see Krishna, began to remember him as she heard of his bodily features. Being completely absorbed in his thought, she gave up her material body conditioned by the laws of nature. After the departure of the Brahmana's wives, Sri Govinda and his cowherd boyfriends enjoyed the food they had been offered. In this way, the ever-joyful personality of Godhead exhibited his transcendental pastimes in the guise of an ordinary human being in order to attract the common people to Krishna consciousness. With his words and beauty, he attracted all the cows, cowherd boys, and damsels in Vrindavan. All of them together enjoyed the pastimes of the Lord. After the return of the wives from Krishna, the Brahmanas engaged in the performance of sacrifices began to regret their sinful activities in refusing food to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They could finally understand their mistake. Engaged in the performance of Vedic rituals, they had neglected the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who had appeared just like an ordinary human being and asked for some food. They began to condemn themselves after seeing the faith and devotion of their wives. They regretted very much that although their wives were elevated to the platform of pure devotional service, they themselves could not understand even a little bit of how to show love and offer loving service to the Supreme Soul. They began to talk among themselves, "To hell with our being born Brahmanas, to hell with our learning all the Vedic literatures, to hell with our performing great sacrifices and observing all the rules and regulations, and to hell with our family. To hell with our expert service in performing the rituals exactly according to the description of the scriptures. To hell with it all, for we have not developed transcendental loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is beyond the speculation of mind, body, and senses." The learned Brahmanas, expert in Vedic ritualistic performances, were properly regretful, because if one does not develop Krishna consciousness, all discharge of religious duties is simply a waste of time and energy. They continue to talk among themselves. The external energy of Krishna is so strong that it can create illusion to overcome even the greatest mystic yogi. Although we expect the expert Brahmanas are considered to be the teachers of all other sections of society, we also have been illusioned by the external energy. Just see how fortunate these women are. They have so devotedly dedicated their lives to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and they did it easily, what is ordinarily so difficult. They gave up their family connections, which are just like a dark well, for the continuation of material miseries. Women in general, being very simple at heart, can very easily take to Krishna consciousness, and when they develop love for Krishna, they can easily get liberation from the clutches of Maya, which are very difficult for so-called intelligent and learned men to surpass. So we will continue reading this chapter, Delivering the Wives of Brahmanas, tomorrow. And one thing which has stood out for me here in this narration is that the simplicity at the heart of a devotee in all the dealings with the lordships, whether it's a small part of devotional service or it's reading of the Shastras or understanding them, is the essence of Krishna consciousness. Krishna loves the simplicity of a person, which is narrated again and again in many of the stories in Bhagavatam. And so we should be very simple in our dealings with our Krishna consciousness activities and just present ourselves as we are at any given time of our life and just do our bhakti accordingly. Krishna sees our innate desires and our sentimentality very nicely. So I wish you all a wonderful week ahead, and we will continue this tomorrow. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Shamita and Narayan Kesha, for watching with me.